It was 2012 in a quiet suburb of Missouri, on a street where the only drama was the changing of the seasons. A mystery was sleeping. A digital ghost frozen in time. The kind of place where nothing ever happens until it does. Miles away, a man named Bruce Rudin was adrift in the quiet hum of his own home. He was navigating a virtual world, the quiet click and drag of his mouse sending the little yellow Google Maps man drifting down silent, pixelated streets. It was a digital form of pacing, a search for nothing in particular, born from a restlessness he couldn't name. And then he saw it. His brother's house, a place he knew as well as his own. His cursor hovered. The image was months old, a snapshot from a sunny day he hadn't been there for. The lawn was trimmed. The garage door was closed. Everything was as it should be, except for the car in the driveway. A cold electric jolt shot through him. It was a vehicle he did not recognize. There parked a white sedan, casually, arrogantly, as if it belonged. His heart began to hammer against his ribs. He leaned in, his face inches from the glow of the monitor. He commanded the satellite to zoom in, the image resolving with terrifying clarity. He could see the dust on the hood, the shadow of a tree branch falling across the roof, and then his eyes locked onto the license plate. It was clear. It was legible. It was a string of numbers and letters that meant nothing to him and everything. His blood ran cold, the ambient noise of his own home. The refrigerator's hum, the tick of a clock vanished, replaced by a roaring silence. In that moment, Bruce Rudin wasn't just looking at a car. He was staring through a digital window into the past. He was looking at a predator captured in a moment of eerie calm, parked in the one place it never should have been. He was staring, with absolute certainty, at his brother's killer. Welcome to Behind the Yellow Tape. I'm Mimi, and here we share some of the most spine-chilling, gut-stirring, mysterious crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So if mystery and crime is your cup of tea, then you'll definitely get your fill here. We upload every Wednesday at 6:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you love a midweek dose of suspense, whether from your favorite seat, the car, before bed, or during your favorite activity, then leave a like to help build the algorithm. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload. Now, let's take a step behind the yellow tape. To understand how that quick digital walk became so vital, we must first step back into the chilling silence that preceded it. The investigation into Scott Rudin's murder had slammed into a dead end, so solid it felt like a wall. The 59-year-old lawyer was found in his own home, a place that should have been his sanctuary. The scene that greeted detectives was one of unspeakable violence, a brutal and personal attack that spoke of a deep, consuming rage. But the scene was also a paradox, a riddle that made no sense. The front door was locked from the inside. The deadbolt was thrown. Every window secured from within. There was no pry marks, no shattered glass, no footprints in the flower beds outside. It was as if the killer had not broken in, but had simply passed through the walls like a phantom, committed the act, and then evaporated. Captain Evans, a veteran whose career was a map of human darkness, stood in the middle of the living room. He'd seen crimes of passion, of greed, of desperation, but this was different. Nothing of value was taken. Scott's wallet, cash, expensive electronics, all left untouched. This wasn't a robbery. The motive was a complete and utter mystery. They had canvassed the neighborhood. No one had seen anything. No one had heard anything. There was no jilted lover, no disgruntled client, no bitter business partner that rose to the surface. The forensic team swept the house. No usable fingerprints that didn't belong. no foreign DNA. The murder weapon was gone, vanished into the same ether as the killer. Scott Rudin was a respected man, a quiet man. He had no known enemies. He was, by all accounts, a ghost in his own life, and now he had been murdered by one. For weeks, then months, the case file sat on Captain Evans' desk. It was the heaviest kind of file, the one filled with questions and empty of answers. A brutal homicide with no suspects, no weapon, and no reason. The case wasn't just cold, it was a phantom of inconspicuous activity. This was seeming to be a ghost story without a ghost, until a brother miles away, restless and heartbroken, decided to take a walk down a digital street. Faced with a crime scene that defied logic, Captain Evans did what any good detective would do. He turned to the victim. He and his team began the painstaking work of excavating Scott Rudin's life, searching for the fracture, the hidden flaw that could explain such a violent end. What they found was nothing. Scott Rudin was exactly what he appeared to be, a respected lawyer, a pillar of his small community. He paid his taxes on time, he volunteered at a local charity. He was the kind of man who returned his shopping cart to the corral. His personal life was a closed, orderly book. No messy divorces, no furious clients threatening lawsuits, no secret gambling debts or shady investments. His finances were pristine. His colleagues described him as diligent, quiet, and fiercely ethical. By all accounts, he was a good man, leading a quiet, unassuming life. And for Captain Evans, a man who had learned to find the truth in the dark corners of human behavior, this pristine portal was the most baffling clue of all. It offered no handhold, no threat to pull. A crime this personal, this violent, demands a motive. A spark of hatred, a flash of greed, a moment of betrayal. But Scott Rudin's life was a fireproof room. The question became an obsession that haunted the entire unit. Who would want this man dead, and why? The investigation stretched from weeks into months. Leads were pursued with dogged determination, only to dissolve into nothing. A neighbor thought they saw a strange car. It belonged to a pizza delivery driver. A cryptic email from a former client. It was a misunderstanding over a bill, long resolved. The case file grew thick with interviews, theories, and forensic reports, but every single path led to the same impenetrable brick wall. The frustration was a physical presence in the precinct, a low-grade hum of collective failure. They were hunting a ghost, and the ghost was winning. Just as the case was settling into the deep freeze of the unsolved cabinet, a call shattered the silence. It was from the victim's brother, Bruce. His voice was hesitant, laced with a grief that had not faded, and a touch of embarrassment for the bizarre nature of his tip. He told Captain Evans about his late-night digital wandering, about the little yellow man on Google Maps, and about the car. The white four-door 1995 Toyota Camry parked so casually in Scott's own driveway. To much of the department, it seemed like the ultimate long shot, a digital phantom, a desperate grasp at a straw of a grieving family. But Captain Evans was a man out of options. He had stared at the brick wall for months. A ghost in the driveway at this point was the most solid lead he had. Despite that, he had assigned a junior detective to follow it up, more to please the family than with any real hope. The request was sent to Google. The data came back, and the timestamp on that image sent a jolt through the entire team. It wasn't from the day of the murder. It wasn't from after. The Google Street View car had captured that image months before. This wasn't a clue from the crime scene. This was a clue from before the crime. It was a premonition frozen in a digital archive, a photo of a maybe killer, or at least his car, casing the home of the man he would later murder. They ran the license plate. The system churned and delivered a name, Tyler Rios. a 23-year-old woman. The room fell silent. They pulled her record. Nothing. No connection to Scott Rudin. No criminal history. She wasn't in his phone logs, his client list, his social circles. She was a perfect stranger, a ghost with a name. The question that had haunted them for months, who would want him dead, had just been answered with a name that made no sense at all. The case had just broken wide open, only to become more mysterious than ever. Captain Evans now had his suspect, a name and a face. But he was staring at a void. Why? What was the connection between a 23-year-old woman and a 59-year-old lawyer who lived in a different world? The answer wasn't hidden in Scott Rudin's orderly life. It was waiting in the digital shadow world of Tyler Rios. Detectives pulled her computer records and a chilling portrait emerged. It was a blueprint for identity theft. A trail of searches for how to assume someone's identity, how to get credit in another person's name, and how to forge documents. Scott Rudin hadn't been killed by an enemy. He hadn't been killed in a crime of passion. He had been selected, chosen at random, like a product on a shelf for the one thing he couldn't protect, his pristine identity. His life, his good name, his impeccable credit history, they were all just resources to be plundered. The killer had come to his door, not with a personal grudge, but with a business plan. The violence was simply the cost of doing business. The big question now, how does a perfect stranger end up murdering a man in his own home? The evidence paints a chilling, logical, yet brutal sequence of events. It began with selection. We know from Tyler Rios' digital footprints that she and her accomplice, a man named John Rios, were hunting for a specific type of victim, someone with a clean credit history, a stable life, whose identity could be clean, stripped, and assumed. Through methods never fully revealed, but likely involving public records or simple neighborhood profiling, they selected Scott Rudin. On December 19, 2011, they drove their white Toyota Camry to his quiet Missouri home. This was not a spontaneous act of violence. This was the execution of a plan. They approached his door, not as killers, but as con artists. They posed as lost motorists, a survey taker, or someone with a fabricated story designed to get a door open. Scott Rudin, a decent and likely trusting man, answered. And then, the plan turned lethal. The evidence suggests a swift, overwhelming, and close quarters attack the moment the door was open. There was no prolonged struggle through the house. The violence was concentrated. The medical examiner would determine that the cause of death was sharp force trauma and asphyxiation. This is the heart of the cold calculus. Scott Rudin was killed not out of rage, but out of necessity. He was a loose end. He was a witness to his own identity theft. To assume his life, his physical presence had to be erased. The killer then likely staged the scene, locking the door from the inside to create the ghost in the walls effect, before slipping out the back door or window, leaving behind a locked house mystery designed to baffle the police. They took nothing of material value because they were looking for something far more valuable: Scott Rudin's entire financial existence. The arrest was not a dramatic guns-drawn raid. It was a slow, methodical tightening of a digital noose. The Google Maps image gave Captain Evans the license plate. The license plate gave them the name Tyler Rios, but they had to be sure. This was their one and only shot. First, the police immediately placed Tyler Rios and her husband John under surveillance. They needed to connect them to the physical evidence. They watched as the couple continued their lives, oblivious to the digital ghost that was closing in on them. Next, the trash pull. In a classic and legally sound investigative technique, detectives retrieved the trash bags the Rioses left out on the curb for collection. Inside, they struck gold. They found mail addressed to Scott Rudin. This was a tangible link. It placed the victim's stolen identity directly in the suspect's possession. With the evidence from the trash pool establishing probable cause, police moved in. They didn't storm the house. Instead, they waited for an opportunity. On March 5th, 2012, they conducted a routine traffic stop on the couple. It was a controlled, safe environment to take them into custody. In separate interviews, the digital and physical evidence was laid out before them. The Google Maps photo, the license plate, Scott Rudin's mail in their trash, the trail of computer searches. Faced with this insurmountable proof, John Rios confessed. He laid out the gruesome details, how they targeted Rudin, how they killed him to steal his identity, and how Tyler had acted as the lookout. Based on his confession and the mountain of corroborating evidence, John Rios pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison for the murder. He will be eligible for parole, but not until he has served 30 years of his life sentence. Tyler Rios pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The case was closed, not by an eyewitness, but by a silent automated car that captured a single damning image, a photograph of a plan in motion long before the world knew a crime had even occurred. This case redefines the landscape of crime and investigation. The killer was convicted, the mystery solved, but the echo of it remains, a low hum in the background of our modern lives. Scott Rudin's murder is a terrifying parable for our time. It tells us that the most dangerous predators are no longer just those who hunt in the shadows of our past. They are the ones who stalk the cold, hard data of our future, who see our identities not as the essence of who we are, but as a commodity to be stolen and sold. It proves that in our digital age, the truth has found new places to hide. It hides in plain sight, in the vast, unblinking digital memory of our world, waiting for the right person, the right moment to connect the dots. It's a story where the most important witness wasn't a neighbor, a friend, or a security camera. It was an algorithm, a silent, tireless observer that, for one fleeting moment, opened its eye and saw the future. So remember, in a world of constant surveillance, the most important evidence might not be what you leave behind, but what you never knew was recorded. Until next time, I'm Mimi, and this has been A Step Behind the Yellow Tape.